Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Thelearningdroid. Today, it's been a while since we've had a video, and it's also been a while since we've done a video on patterning. Today I thought I'd do a patterning about leather. Now, you can use direct heat transfer for laser printed patterns on leather, but what happens is you tend to heat scar the leather quite badly, which makes it look less nice. You also tend to have a problem with papers with the ink stripping off the surface layer of leather, which can remove bits that you don't want it to remove. So what we're going to have a look at is pressure-based transfer, and for this we need our pattern. We're going to clip it to the leather so that it doesn't move, and we're going to have it face up. Now you can do this with drawn patterns, you can do this with laser printed patterns, you can do this with inkjet printed patterns, but bear in mind that you are going to likely be accidentally burning some of the pattern. So if you're going to be doing it with inkjet printed patterns or with things that you're not safe burning, I mean even laser printed ink you shouldn't really be burning, then either use a full extractor or a vapor filter mask to protect yourself. In this case, for this sort of pattern transfer, rather than using a pattern transfer bit, which is a large flat piece often used on solid bits, we're going to be using in this case a spear point tip, but you can also use a razor point tip, a sharp edge tip, a cut tip, any tip that's got a very, very fine edge. And you're also going to be using a very, very low temperature, so you want a machine that's adjustable down to very low temperatures, because what we want to do is we want to avoid burning the leather as much as possible. We want to press the leather. Now the reason we're going to use any heat at all is if you try and cold press the leather, you'll find that the marks you leave in it are very, very fine and very, very difficult to follow unless you press very, very hard. And if you press very, very hard, it's more difficult to follow a pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using heat just to embed that pattern slightly more easily. So we'll tilt down and we'll have a look at the pattern. Now I'm not going to be using my mask, I'm going to be using a fan while we do this, just to keep the vapes away, and I'm only going to be doing this without a mask this once. Where possible, always wear a mask or always use a full extractor, but for this case, because I'm going to be talking about it as I do it, I won't have those. So let's move on to the actual burning. Okay guys, so here's our pattern, and because I've got the clips, I've double stacked pieces of leather underneath so that it's supported and there's pressure down. I've got my Peter Child's pyrography machine. I've got it turned actually all the way down to 0, and you'll actually find that even despite that is plenty enough for me to transfer a pattern across. So here's what I'm going to do. I've heated it up. You'll notice that I've bent it just so that I can get the right sort of angle, but I've got the sharp edge of my spear point. I did a video on how to create spear points, and all I'm going to do is follow the pattern and press into it, and you'll see that because it's a spear point, at some points I'm cutting the leather, and because this pattern is dark on the inside, I don't have to worry about overshooting it on the inside. If you've got a pattern that's light on the inside, be very careful not to overshoot, because of course you will be marking the leather underneath. And what I'll do is I'll zoom in a bit so that you can get a nice close look. So hold the pattern still and the piece of leather still. Place the tip where you want it and just follow the pattern. And as you can see, I'm not burning. You'll notice that if you use an inked piece of paper rather than a drawn pattern, so a pencil drawn pattern or a graphite drawn pattern, you'll notice that the ink melts slightly as you do it. That's fine. One thing to bear in mind though is because the ink melts, it's not really advisable to use the same bit that you've used for patterning on inked paper on pyrography, because you'll be transferring the ink and you can stain it, and it can be very awkward and very unpleasant, and it's just nicer if you do a fresh point. As I've shown you, it's quite easy to make points like this, and if you don't charge for time, you're probably looking at about 10 pence worth of wire, even less than that, maybe 3p worth of wire to make this sort of point. If you charge for time, because it's going to take you about 20-25 minutes to make this sort of point, then even charging for time at minimum wage, you're going to be looking at only a couple of quid to make this sort of point. Now, I'm not too worried about this pattern being super accurate. It's actually very good for curved patterns. I'll probably be posting up a video of some mini projects, which are very short videos of projects that I've been doing, and one of them is, or two of them are Celtic Knots. For those, I was very, very careful with the pattern transfer because I wanted the Celtic knot to be accurate. With this, we've just got a little geometric sun pattern. It's actually a tattoo pattern, and I'm slightly rushing because I haven't got much time at the moment, because my workshop is a shared environment, and when I'm filming with sound I've got a limited amount of time. So here we have a pressure transferred pattern, and I just want to finish it off. The reason you want to clip it in place is so that your pattern's not going to be moving. But as with pyrography patterns on wood, if you've got a larger pattern than this, because this is quite a small pattern, if you've got a larger pattern than this, you can always use something like masking tape, or or even pins. This method is actually very similar to the method called pin and scratch that I used for another piece, but while this will work on wood, it's slightly more difficult to get it to work on wood. I'm being very sloppy with this pattern, so it's going to be a complete and utter mess, which is my fault and not the patterning methods, but as I said, I'm feeling a little rushed. That, and I haven't slept much. Reason there haven't been many videos guys, is I've been working very hard on trying to get a proper job, a paid job. So there's been lots of job applications, lots of job interviews, and it's left me a little bit tired. But just make sure you can see, there we go, we've got our heat transferred pattern, and I know it looks a bit of a mess, but that is actually all you need to copy that design. There's our piece of paper. If you use too much heat, then this happens, and you'll have burnt through the paper and you'll have damaged the paper. Luckily I was wearing a vapor mask when I did this. I didn't notice that my pyrography machine was actually turned up too high, and it's hard to tell at first until you actually start getting little wisps of smoke. So be safe, wear a mask, use a filter system, and there we go guys, that's heat transferring a pattern.